Hello guys, and welcome to the next chapter in How to Build with Rusty. In today's chapter, we are going to be talking about layering. Last time we talked about depth and how depth can really bring stuff out in the build. But layering is a little bit of a sort of depth part 2. Because as we layer things together in a build, we can make it look extra amazing. And there's a lot of ways that we can do that, but I set up an example over here that I want to go over. So, talking about perspective, like we did last time, you guys will notice we've got a little bit of a perspective here. This is supposed to be like a little gardeny area, obviously, and basically what I've done here is we've got several layers going in several different directions of depth, and I wanted to show sort of how these layers are put together because it's not that hard. So the first thing we've got is the wall. Then we've got these supports on the corners. Then we've got the roof, believe it or not, is really the next layer. So just because you're not going sort of layering in this direction, right? We're layering in the top direction. So this extra layer that we've added on top with the roof is something that is creating depth in a lot of different directions, actually. It's created this little tiny gap in between here that we can then fill with a fourth layer of depth, which includes the shutters, the flower boxes here, sort of the, if you want to call it, the makeup, if you will, of the wall. And then a fifth layer of depth is this little branch, vines, whatever you want to call it, that's hanging off. A sixth layer of depth is going to be this little gardeny area. We've got a seventh layer of depth, not going in this direction, but going directly up with the moss, carpet, and the tall grass. And then finally, we've got our cobblestone wall. These are all these layers of depth, and this really isn't teaching you anything, is it? So as you're making a build, there's a couple things that are really important. You can have very little detail and make it look great. You can also have a lot of detail, and as long as you're doing it correctly, you can still make it look amazing. It does make it stand out, and there's things that it tells the audience, whoever's looking at the art piece, about the art. And the more layers you have, typically, the more a person is going to enjoy what they're looking at. This little thrown piece together of stuff is interesting because if you've never seen this before, I bet you're going to walk over here and be like, what is this? And you're going to want to open this and you're going to be like, what in the world? Because of the depth that in the layers that are here. Right? It's not just a one piece. There's stuff around it that's making it interesting to look at. And of course, we've got a color palette that is sort of unintentionally placed there. So that just goes to show you that it's not about, oh, let me think about how I'm going to build a house and where all of the little pieces and parts are going to be put in. It's all about the story that you're willing to tell. That little build that we just threw together right there could make sense if you've got a story for it. It could be meaningful to somebody or you if you have put together that little thing with some intention behind it. It's all about the intention. That's really, really what I'd love to drive home as the main point of this entire series. So I wanted the house to tell a cozy story. So what I did is I put this slightly lighter wood up at the top border here, which plays really nice with this light blue and this cobblestone. Something that you might not necessarily see, but because you can kind of see these little pinpoints here, it really helps out a lot. And then I decided to build a wall around it because I wanted it to feel like it's a private place. It's not something that's really public for everybody. But keeping this sort of green tone towards that. So all of a sudden, I just explained to you in layers, each different layer as a story. And it makes more sense now rather than this layer, this layer, this layer, this layer. So I quickly threw this together here just to show you that if we just throw in these 3 things with a little bit of stone, what does this look like to you? If you said a blacksmith, that's sort of what I'm going for. Now, we've done nothing really to denote that. We just add a little place here for this person to be a blacksmith. And all of a sudden, you start to get this blacksmith-like vibe. So when you're going into your build and you're saying, well, you know, I've got the structure down, I've got the beams, I've got the roof, but I'm really struggling to figure out what to do with the detailing on the outside. Who is the person? Why do they exist? There's tons of fantasy generators online. Literally go pick a random name, pick a random occupation for the person. You don't have to be that creative. You really don't. You can go with a bunch of random stuff. You can look up D&D, roll some random characters, and pick their skills and make it into a fun game, and then make a house out of it. That's what I'm talking about. Spend the time, take the time to figure out who the person is, get to know the person, and then make them a beautiful, wonderful house to live in. Here we are in a regular world, and I want to show you guys macro layering. So, in Minecraft, we are blessed to be able to have terrain generation. So, when we're building a build, we're not just concerned with the layering of our house. We get concerned with the layering of the build itself. You can see that there's really only one way to get to this position. You have to come out over the hills over this way, in which case by the time, you know, you're right about here, somebody's going to see you coming this direction. You've got a river on this way, so it's going to be very hard for you to attack. And then this way is the only other way, and there's absolutely no way that you're going to be getting in through here unless you go around this way. So I just made up a story for why this exists in 2 seconds, looking at the different layers of the terrain and the placement of this build that Minecraft randomly threw here. And that's what I'm talking about. Layers are your story. If you follow the last 2 lessons, you will be in a really good position right now. You'll hopefully understand what I'm talking about if I've taught it correctly. We spent the first lesson talking about these 1-layer pieces of depth. So you should be playing around with these and knowing what you'll use in different situations. Then you may have built a build and started working on depth. So now you can start to add more layers of depth to your build while telling your story, because you know how to use these little bits and pieces. And so, as you add on top of the layers here, you'll expand the story out more and more and give more reason, give more nuance, give more understanding to who the person is that you're building this building for. I hope you guys are understanding that layering is really important in building a good build, but at the same time, you can't teach layering without also teaching the story. Going to your build that you made hopefully last week, with all of your little layers of depth that you've already created, and starting to add on top of them. Make a story for what the build is. Who lives here? Why do they live here? How long have they lived here? And start making things for it. Start asking the deep questions. And like I said, if you're running short on ideas, start to use some fantasy generators and different things. And maybe recreate the house in an actual Minecraft map in creative, not just a flat world, so that you can get those other environmental layers behind it. I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. If you did, make sure to leave a like on it. It helps me out a lot. We're coming to the end of section 1, guys. I'm really excited. It has been a great journey so far in making this tutorial series, and I'm excited to get into different topics and really dive deep into some of these things. I've gone sort of broad and taught a lot of broad techniques and different ways of thinking, but I can't wait to sort of get into the sort of meat and potatoes stuff that's going to be coming up. So anyways, guys, thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, happy mining and crafting.